Alright, so in our next lesson, now we're going to be covering still special triangles. This is going to be a different proportion setup, and this is our 30, 60, 90 triangles. So it says, consider the following equilateral triangle. What is the measure of each angle in this triangle? So when we do have an equilateral triangle, all angles are equal because all the sides are equal. Okay, so we take 180 degrees because that's what adds up to the three angles of a triangle, and we divide it by 3. And so if we divide it evenly into 3 equal pieces, all of these angles would be 60 degrees each. Okay. So here it says draw an altitude on each equilateral triangle to form two 30, 60, 90 triangles. Use the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of the altitude and leave your answer in simplest radical form. Okay, so just in case you don't remember, your altitude is your height of your triangle. So going from the very top down to the corner, this is my altitude. Okay, so I'm going to draw the altitude for every single one of them. All right, so for example here, now I have my right triangle here. If you can see it, that is my 2 legs that make the right angle. And then this 4 here is going to be my hypotenuse, okay? So from here to here, since I cut this in half, this is going to be 2. So when I do a squared plus b squared equals c squared, I am going to do 2 squared plus b squared, I don't know, equals 4 squared. Well, 2 squared is 4. So 4 plus b squared equals 16. I subtract the 4 on both sides, and I get b squared equals 16 minus 4 is 12, and then I take the square root. Now I can't take the square root of 12 and get a whole number, so I'm going to break it down into 2 numbers. So I know 4 times 3 gives me 12, and I can take the square root of 4, that gives me 2. And then I can leave the 3 trapped inside the square root because we can't take the square root of it. Okay? So, it says to find the length of the altitude, this is going to be my altitude, which is this piece right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the same thing for this next one. So this is my A, this is my B, and this is my C. Now since this is my right triangle right here, this section from right here, if I cut that 8 in half, that gives me 4. So I'm going to do 4 squared. We don't know what B is, so I'm going to call it B squared equals my C squared is 8 squared. So 4 squared is 16 plus b squared equals 8 squared is 64. Okay. I go ahead and subtract my 16 here, and we get b squared equals, I believe it's 48. Yes. All right, then next, is we're going to take the square root. Now we can't take the square root of 48 and get a whole number, so we're going to go ahead and break it down. So it's going to break down to 16 times 3. Now we can take the square root of 16, that gives us 4, but the 3 we can't, so it stays trapped inside the square root. So the altitude of this triangle is going to be 4 in the square root of 3. Okay, so then from here, sorry, this is bothering me that it says 2, 8. Okay, so then we're going to do the same thing for this one. Okay, so this is going to be my A, my B, and my C. So I am going to, let's see, since we cut this piece in half, this is going to be 5. So we're going to do A squared. So it'll be 5 squared plus B squared equals 10 squared. 5 squared is 25. B squared, we don't know what that is, and 10 squared is 100. We move over the 25, and we get B squared equals 75. We take the square root. Now we can't take the square root of 75 and get a whole number, so I'm going to have to break it down into 2 numbers. So 25 times 3 gives me 75. Now remember, one of these numbers, when we pick factors of 75, one of them has to be a perfect square, a number that you can take the square root of and still get a whole number. So the square root of 25 gives you 5, and the 3 stays trapped in the square root. Okay. So then let's go ahead and notice a pattern. So if we look here, we can see that all of them have a square root of 3. All of them, okay? And then we look at the coefficient in the front. So this 2 comes from this side right here. This 4 comes from that exact same side, and this 5 comes from here, okay? So then we have our 30, 60, 90 triangle theorem. In a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the length of the hypotenuse is 2 multiplied by the length of the shorter leg. And the longer leg is the square root of 3 multiplied by the length of the shorter leg. So remember, this one was double the size of this one right here. And then the altitude was the square root of 3. Okay, so let's go ahead. Now we have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. I'm still going to make my tables like I did in the previous problem. So here, this time, okay, we have 30, 60, 90, which is x. X in the square root of 3 is across the 60, and then 2 times x is going to be across the 90. Okay, and so then from there, we're going to go ahead and take our information. So the side across our 30. So here's my 30. The side across my 30 is 3. So then the 3 is going to go right here. Okay, then we have the side across the 60. Okay, the side across the 60 is this side right here. It goes directly across. And then that one, we don't know. That's what we're looking for. Okay, then this one right here across the 90-degree angle, we don't know either. Okay, now with this information, I know that x is equal to 3. So then I'm going to go ahead and plug it in here. So this one would be 3 and the square root of 3. And then when I plug it in the last box, it'll be 2 times 3, which is 6. All right, let's go into the next example. Same thing, I'm going to go ahead and make my table. Let me get up here. 30, 60, 90, the side across your 30 is x, the side across your 60 is x times the square root of 3, and then the side across your 90 is 2 times x. So we go ahead and see, well, what information did they give us? Okay, so they gave us this is, oh, whoops, I thought I got the eraser. The highlighter. So this is 6, that is across our 30-degree angle. So it's going to go in this box. So that means that x is equal to 6. Now the side across my 60 would be this side right here. Okay, so then this one we're trying to find out. Well, if x is 6, then that means that this one is 6 times the square root of 3. Okay, and then the side across our 90-degree angle is going to be 2 times x, so this side right here. So if this side is 2 times x, and we know x is 6, 2 times 6 gives us 12. And that's it. All right. So let's go ahead and do it again. We have our 30, 60, 90. X in the square root of 3, and 2 times x. Okay, so then we go ahead and look at the diagram, or our triangle here. And so they give us the side across our 30 is 10. They tell us right here. So then in this box, we are going to put 10. Okay. Then the side across our 60-degree angle, here's our 60, this side over here across from the 60, we don't know what it is. That's what we're looking for. So now that we know x is equal to 10 because of this information right here, then that means that this is 10 times the square root of 3. Okay. And then to find the side across our 90-degree angle, okay, which is our hypotenuse, the longest side, we're going to take 2 times x. Well, since x is 10, 2 times 10, that gives us 20. So our hypotenuse is 20. Okay. So here, we're going to do the exact same thing that we've been doing. I'm going to go ahead and make my table. So we have x, 30, 60, 90. And we have x, this one's x in the square root of 3, and this one across the 90 is 2 times x. So then we go ahead and look at the information that they give us, and this time they give us the side across the 90-degree angle. Okay, so then that means that the 18 is going to go in this box. So that means 2 times x is equal to 18. So we do have a little bit of solving to do. 2x equals 18. So to solve for x, we're going to go ahead and have to divide by 2, and we get x equals 9. Okay, so now that we know that x is equal to 9, that's what we could put here. the side across our 30-degree angle. So this one's going to be the side across, that's going to be our 30-degree angle, so the side across our 30 would be here. Okay, and it's your smaller side, your smallest side. So now, to find the 60-degree angle, we're going to take x, which we already know. This is my side across the 60. So now that I know that x is equal to 9, when I plug it in here, it's just going to be 9 times the square root of 3. Okay, let's look at the next example. I'm going to go ahead and make my table. Here we have, why do I keep doing that? 30, 60, 90. X in the square root of 3, and 2 times x. So when we look at the information that they give us, and they tell us that this side is 22, which is a side across our 90-degree angle. So the 22 is going to go in this box. Okay. So just like the other problem, we do have a little bit of work to do. We know that 2x is equal to 22. That's what we got from here. We go ahead and solve for x by getting rid of the 2 in the front, and we do that by dividing. So 22 divided by 2 gives us 11. Okay. So since we got x is equal to 11, that's what goes in our first box, because that's what our 30-degree angle, across our 30-degree angle, is equal to. So this side over here is going to be equal to 11. Okay, so then to find the side across our 60-degree angle, here's my 60 angle, across from it, we're going to take our x value and we're going to multiply it times the square root of 3. So our x value is 11, and we multiply it times the square root of 3. Okay, the next example. So I'm going to make my table again. So we have 30, 60, 90. X in the square root of 3, and 2 times x. Okay, so we look to see what information they give us. So they give us this side right here, 7 in the square root of 3. This side is across our 60-degree angle. So that means 7 in the square root of 3 is going to go right here. 7 in the square root of 3. Okay, so now in order for us to figure out what x is, I'm going to go ahead, and we know that x in the square root of 3 is equal to 7 in the square root of 3. So just by looking at this, it might be obvious what x is equal to. If not, we're going to cancel out the square root of 3 by dividing both sides by the square root of 3. So here cancels. We get x equals, here cancels as well. We get x equals 7. Okay. So now that we solved for x, and we know x is equal to 7, I'm going to fill it in here. Okay. That's the side across our 30. So if this is my 30-degree angle, the side across would be this one. So that means this side right here is 7 units. Okay, now the side, which is our hypotenuse, the side across the 90-degree angle is right here. Here's my 90-degree angle. That is going to be 2 times x. Okay, well, since x is 7, 2 times 7 will give us that side, which is 14. All right, so then the next example, we go ahead and start this off the same way. We make our table. We have a 30, 60, 90 triangle, which is x in the square root of 3, and 2 times x. Okay, so we see what information they give us. So they give us this side right here, 15 is the square root of 3, which is across our 60-degree angle. So here's 60 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and fill that in, 15 in the square root of 3. Okay, so we can see just by stuff of this information that x is equal to 15. So I go ahead and fill it in here. Okay, and that is the side right here, the one across our 30. Okay, now to find the side across our 90-degree angle, okay, here's 90 degrees, it's going to be 2 times x. Well, we know x is 15, so 2 times 15, which gives us 30. So that means that side, our hypotenuse, is 30. All right, so now I know we thought it was pretty simple. Now we're going to make things tricky, just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and make my table. 30, 60, 90. X in the square root of 3, and 2 times x. Okay, so if I look here, I know I see a square root of 3, and you guys want to put it under here with the 60. But that is not the case, because if you notice here, you have to pay attention to what angle it is across. It is across your 90-degree angle, so it has to go in this box right here. Okay, so that's what makes it tricky. So this is 6 in the square root of 3. So what that means is that 2 times x is equal to 6 and the square root of 3. And we're going to solve for x. And the way we do so is by dividing both sides by 2. This cancels. We get x equals 6 divided by 2 is 3. Square root of 3. Okay. So that's what x is equal to after we solve. So I'm going to put here 3 in the square root of 3. Okay. Which is the side across our 30-degree angle, which would be this one right here. Okay, since the other one's 60, that means that one's a 30-degree angle. Okay, and remember, it's also your shortest side. Okay, then we're going to find this one, the one across our 60. Well, we already know what x is. We know x is 3 in the square root of 3, and that's what x is, and then we still have to multiply it times the square root of 3. Okay, so the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 gives you the square root of 9, and we know the square root of 9 is 3. So we have 3 times 3, which is just equal to 9. Okay, so that means that this side right here is equal to 9. All right, so let's go ahead and try another example. We set up our table. This is why we set up our table every time, to make sure that we organize our information correctly. So 30, 60, 90. Okay. As you can see here, they give us this is 2 in the square root of 3. Which is across our 30-degree angle. So it doesn't go across your 60 because we see a square root of 3. It goes across your 30. Sorry, I forgot to write it here. X in the square root of 3, and 2 times x. Okay, so it's going to go here across our 30. It's 2 in the square root of 3. Okay, now we're going to find this one since we know what x is. This is across our 60-degree angle. So here's my 60. This is the side across the 60. So here we're going to take 2 in the square root of 3, which is our x, and we have to multiply it times the square root of 3. Well, the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 9, and the square root of 9 is 3. So 2 times 3 gives us 6. Okay, and then the last side is the one across our 90-degree angle. So if it's across my 90-degree angle, I'm going to have to take 2 and multiply it times x. So I'm going to take 2, and my x is 2 in the square root of 3. Now 2 times 2 gives you 4, so it's 4 in the square root of 3. Okay, now let's look at the next example. So here we have our 30, 60, 90 again. So I'm going to go ahead and make my table. I have 30, 60, 90. X in the square root of 3, and 2 times x. Okay, so they give us, this is 12, which is the side across my 60-degree angle. Okay, so I'm going to have to put that information right here, 12. So then if I want to find the other two sides, we'll already know x in the square root of 3. I'm going to put it right here, x in the square root of 3 equals 12. So to solve for x, I'm going to have to divide both sides by the square root of 3, and we get x equals 12 divided by the square root of 3. Remember, there's this rule where you can't have a square root on the denominator, so you need to get rid of it, or what we call rationalize. You have to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 3. So on the top, we get 12 in the square root of 3, and the bottom square root of 3 times square root of 3 is the square root of 9. We can take the square root of 9 and get a whole number. That gives us 3. And then 12 divided by 3 gives us 4. So 4 in the square root of 3. So now that we know that's what x is equal to, that's what goes here. 4 in the square root of 3. So that means this side right here is 4 in the square root of 3. And then last, we have across our 90-degree angle. So we have to take 2 and multiply it times 4 in the square root of 3, which would give us 8 in the square root of 3. All right, so the next problem we have here is another 30, 60, 90. So remember, we started all our problems off the same way. Let's go ahead and make a table. So here we have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. So we have x in the square root of 3, and 2 times x. Okay. So then from there, we're going to go ahead and figure out what they give us and what side that is. So here we have an 18. This is across my 60-degree angle. It's opposite my 60-degree angle. So then that means that I'm going to have to put the 18 in this box right here. Oh. Okay, so then because it does go in this box right here, x in the square root of 3 is equal to 18. Now it's not that obvious what x is equal to, so we're going to have to solve for it. So x in the square root of 3 equals 18. We divide by the square root of 3. Okay, we get x equals, now remember we can't have a square root on the bottom, so I'm going to go ahead and rationalize it, which means you're going to cancel out the square root of 3. So we have to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 3. So we have 18 in the square root of 3 over square root of 3 times square root of 3 gives you the square root of 9. Okay, which in turn, we're going to have 18 and the square root of 3, and then the square root of 9 gives you 3. And then one more step, we take 18 and divide it by 3, that gives us 6, and the square root of 3. Okay, so then that gives us our x. Okay, so that's what's going to go in this one, which is the one across our 30, is going to be 6 in the square root of 3. Okay, and the one across our 90-degree angle, which is our longest side, is going to go here. And so that one is going to be 2 times our x. Well, we know that our x is 6 in the square root of 3. So we're going to do 2 times 6 in the square root of 3, which gives us 12 square root of 3. And that's it. So let's go ahead and go on to the next one. We start off the same way all the time. Set up a table, that way we organize our information and we do not make careless mistakes. So 30, 60, 90, x in the square root of 3, and 2 times x. Okay. So then from there, we go ahead and look at the information that is given. So they gave us, this is 4, which is across our 60-degree angle. So that means a 4 is going to go in this box. I'm going to go ahead and write the 4 here. Once again, that means x in the square root of 3 is equal to 4, which is not obvious what x is. So we're going to go ahead and have to solve for x. So we start off by dividing both sides by the square root of 3. But we can't have a square root on the bottom, so we do have to rationalize it. Okay, it cancels here, and we get x equals 4 in the square root of 3 over the square root of 3 times the square root of 3 gives us the square root of 9. Which in turn, the square root of 9 gives us 3. Okay, so now that we know that x is 4 in the square root of 3, that's what we're going to put here. 4 in the square root of 3 over 3. Okay, and then, okay, that means this side right here, the one across our 30-degree angle. Okay, it's that side. Then for a 90-degree angle, the side across the 90 is this long side, the hypotenuse. So we go ahead and take 2 and multiply it times x. So our x is 4 in the square root of 3 over 3. Okay, so when you multiply those, all you have to do is multiply the numerator. So you multiply 2 times 4, which gives us 8 in the square root of 3 over 3. So in the beginning, the problems were nice. We had these pretty little numbers. Everything worked out good. But the more that we went into this, the numbers got a little tricky. Okay, so just be very careful. So let's look at this next one. Okay, let's set up our table. 30, 60, 90. X in the square root of 3, and 2 times x. And then we identify what information they give us. So across the 30, they give us this side, which is a square root of 11. Okay, so that's what goes here. Okay, so that means that x is a square root of 11. So I go ahead and instead of these x's, I can go straight into plugging in. So this is going to be the square root of 11 times the square root of 3. Okay, which is the one across our 60. Now remember, when you have two square roots with different numbers inside, you can actually just multiply them when you're multiplying. So 11 times 3 gives us the square root of 33. If we can simplify that, we would, but nothing multiplies to give us 33. That is a perfect square. Okay, so then we have 2 times x. On 2 times x, we are going to take our x value, which is the square root of 11, so 2 times the square root of 11. Now you can't take 2 and multiply it times 11, because 2 isn't under a square root. So it would just stay like that. And that's it. That would be this side right here. All right. So then this next one, they give us, this is a square root of 6, which is across our 90. So I'm going to go ahead and make my table. So we have 30, 60, 90. X in the square root of 3, and 2 times x. Okay. And the one that they give us is across the 90. Okay, so that square root of 6 is going to go here. Square root of 6. Okay, so then from here, we know that 2x is equal to the square root of 6. So we're going to go ahead and solve for x. So I'm going to have to divide both sides by 2. We get x equals the square root of 6 over 2. You can't divide 6 by 2. That doesn't give you 3 because the 2 doesn't have a square root. Now, if it did have a square root, then you can divide the numbers. But since it doesn't, it just stays as the square root of 6 over 2. Okay, so then that means that's what x is. So I go ahead and plug it in here instead of x. That means the side across our 30-degree angle is equal to the square root of 6 over 2. Okay, so then for here, instead of x, now that I know what it is, I'm going to plug it in here, the square root of 6 over 2. And we are multiplying that times the square root of 3. Okay, so for this one, you can multiply the square roots because square root of 6 and the square root of 3, that's going to give us the square root of 18. I'm going to do my work right here. The square root of 18, and that's going to be over 2. Now we can simplify that because 9 times 2 gives us 18. So 9 times 2, we know that gives us 18. That's still under the square root. And we can take the square root of 9 and get a whole number. That gives us 3. We can't take the square root of 2 and get a whole number. It stays trapped in there. So this one is going to reduce to 3 and the square root of 2 over 2. And that is this side right here across our 60. This one right here. All right. The last one that's like this, so we go ahead and set up our table. 30, 60, 90. X, and the square root of 3, and 2 times x. Okay, then from there, I am going to figure out what information they give us. So they give us this side right here. Now this one's not across the 30 because it does touch the 30 and the 90-degree angle. So this angle right here, even though they don't give us a number, if this one's 30 and this one's 90, then that one must be the 60. Okay, so then that means that this one is equal to the square root of 15, which means we're going to have some solving to do. So we have x and the square root of 3 equals the square root of 15. And to solve for x, we divide both sides by the square root. Now, they both have square roots. The 15 is under the square root and the 3 is under the square root. So you can actually divide these numbers. So we have 15 divided by 3 gives me 5. So x is equal to the square root of 5, which is what we're going to put here. Okay, and then that's the side across your 30. So this side right here is going to be the square root of 5. And then next, we have the one across our 90-degree angle. So right here, the one across our 90-degree angle is going to be 2 times x. Okay, well, 2 times x, x is the square root of 5, so we're going to do 2 times the square root of 5, and that's it. All right, moving on. The last two problems, these ones, they actually want us to round to the nearest 10. Okay, so this time we're not going to leave it in radical form. We're going to have to get a decimal, so we're going to use our calculators for this one. We still start off the same way, 30, 60, 90. X in the square root of 3, and 2 times x. I'm going to go ahead and write that on here also. 30, 60, 90, x in the square root of 3, and 2 times x. Okay, so then from there, they give us this side is 5.2. Okay, this side is across my 90-degree angle, so it's going to go on this last box. So that means the 5.2 goes right here. 5.2. So then we're going to go ahead and solve for x. This tells us that 2 times x is equal to 5.2, so we divide by 2. And we get 2.6. Okay, that is going to be what my x equals, so that means that this is the side across my 30-degree angle. Okay, that one's equal to x. So x equals 2.6. And then to find the side across our 60, I didn't change colors. The side across our 60-degree angle, we're going to have to do x times the square root of 3. Okay, so 2.6 times the square root of 3. And that gives us 4.5. And that's it. All right, looking at the next one. They give us 8.3. 8.3 is directly across our 60, so that's going to go in this box right here. So 8.3. Okay, and then the one across the 30 is going to give us our x, this one right here. So we're going to have to set it up. X in the square root of 3 equals 8.3, and we solve for x by dividing by the square root of 3. What we do to one side, we have to do it on the other side. This cancels, x equals, and I'm going to put that in my calculator. Second square root of 3, 4.79. Okay, so that's what x is equal to. So when we plug it in here, 4.79. And then last, we go ahead and multiply that times 2, and that gives us 9.58, which is going to be across your 90. And that's it. Thank you guys. Bye. We'll see you guys next time.